All right, so it's Kurt, the wordy nerd. Um, just figured I'd do another power video. Um, this time I want to tell a story that was kind of fun. Um, it was summer 1995. I was hanging out downtown Richmond, Virginia, over on Gray Street. Used to be a little underground coffee house called the Bitters Suite. Play on words. And while my friends were still inside the restaurant, I had stepped outside to get some air and just walk around for a couple minutes. And while I was walking around, I noticed that somebody on a bike a little bit behind me was kind of following me, it seemed like, which was weird because I was only like a block and a half. But it threw me for a moment because most of the time people on a bike would have just whizzed past you, right? Like this person was just simply slowly coming behind me. So I glance over my shoulder to see what's going on, and it's a VCU Bike Police officer. And I was like, that's weird. So there used to be a Burger King over on Gray Street, and there were huge high hedges. So I step off behind the hedges and sit down on the steps in front of where the Burger King used to be. And the officer on the bike passes by me, but as she does, she kind of looks over, sees that I'm sitting there, and I was like, okay, it's just my imagination. A couple minutes later, she rolls back past me again, and I was like, okay, well, but she's bike police, so she's probably just circling the area, right? Like that's just normal. Except I had never noticed a bike police officer do that in the same space in all the time that we had been living out there. So I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but I didn't move and I didn't do anything. I just sat there. So a couple moments later, she pulled past me one more time and then kind of backed up a little bit so that she was directly blocking the path between the hedges and out. And I was like, okay, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I haven't done anything, so this was just so weird. And she says to me, hey, you're one of the guys I usually see over at the park doing martial arts and stuff, aren't you? And I took a sigh, like, whew, okay, yeah, why? Is it wrong? Are we not allowed to do that? And she's like, what? Oh, no. Oh, my God, no, sorry. Look, a couple of nights ago, we were taking down a guy, and he must have been on drugs or something because like nothing we were doing was working, and I wound up getting kicked in the head, and she kind of shows a little bump on her forehead, and I was like, oh God. She's like, so what I was wondering was, would you be able to teach us some self-defense so that we could protect ourselves, because they don't give us any training whatsoever. And this blew my mind. I was like, okay, sure, absolutely. At this point in my life, I'm like almost 20 years old, been in martial arts off and on most of my life, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. So after a few weeks of small lessons and teaching holds, locks, breaks, proper striking, all this kind of stuff, we're hanging out outside of the Bittersweet again like normal. This was our thing every week, especially during the summertime, but through most of the year. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, myself and several of my close circle of friends at the time, that's what we did. We knew every week that's where we were going to be. And so anybody that knew us also knew that's where we were going to be. So we're hanging out outside, and we're getting ready to head over to P.O.W.E.R, which I might have mentioned in the last video. And if I didn't, P.O.W.E.R is probably the most active place in the state of Virginia. Very good for catching activity, if you understand. But we're standing around, and one of the police officers is talking with us, and they're like, so what are you guys doing, and blah blah blah. And we're like, yeah, we're going over to P.O.W.E.R, and yes, it's a state park, and yes, it's supposed to be closed after dark, and yes, they know that people go over there anyway. So he's like, that's cool, don't get into trouble. And this is where it takes a weird turn. He says, be careful, there are some really crazy people out there. the kind of crazy that you should really, really be careful for. So this, of course, piques our interest. What kind of crazy are we talking about? Jim says, well, not too long ago, we got a phone call early in the morning, like 6:15 or something in the morning. And it's the groundskeeper for over at Hollywood Cemetery, which overlooks Belle Isle up on the hill over top of the river. Okay. Belle Isle is a little isle in the James River. We used to refer to it as the island. Okay. So the groundskeeper calls because he thinks that some kids have broken in overnight and have vandalized one of the mausoleums or something. And so the police get there to investigate. And as they get there to investigate, they're talking with the guy, and he's like, yeah, you know, the kids stuff, blah, 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 whatever. But the important thing is the police look at it, and it turns out that the door wasn't broken into. It was broken out of. So they wrote it up as some kids must have gone in, opened it. The door must have closed behind them somehow, and they damaged the door trying to get back out. Now, so we're like, okay, well, we don't play in graveyards, so that's not even an issue. He's like, no, that's not just hang on. A couple of days later, or the next morning or something like that, some guy gets a hold of one of the local Richmond newspapers, and he talks to them about, he tells them that, oh my God, he tells them that he is a vampire from the Civil War era, and that he left Hollywood Cemetery the other night, and that he could prove who he was, and he gives the writer all sorts of historically factual details and things that he said that they didn't know. And so the writer, you know, of course, doesn't believe any of this stuff. Like, this is all craziness, right? It's got to be some guy that's got a good knowledge of history, and he's just being weird. But they go through all this, and it turns out that he knew things about the mausoleum that nobody else did, and the police hadn't reported it, and this hadn't even made it to the news. So it was just really weird. And then just as quickly, the guy's gone. Like, that's it. So the police joked about it. They're like, you know, officially we know that the guy's just crazy, but be aware that crazy is still dangerous. So there's one of the fun things to know about for Richmond, Virginia, is there's the Civil War vampire that's out there in the world somewhere.